Across the frozen plains of northern Europe, modern explorers continue to find ancient earthen tombs that were broken into centuries ago. But the intruders were not looking for gold. They left the riches untouched. Instead, they placed massive, crushing boulders over the inhabitants, pinning them to the soil. What could possess a hardened society of ancient warriors to disturb their own ancestors? They believed that the departed did not always stay resting. Sometimes they swelled with unnatural power, returning in the dark of winter to claim the life essence of anyone they encountered. To stop them, these communities did not just use weapons. They literally put the shadows on trial, using the power of the law to banish the unthinkable. You are about to uncover the chilling reality of the Norse Revenant. Imagine a winter evening in the ancient north. The sun dips below the horizon early, plunging the snow-swept valleys into profound darkness. Inside the grand wooden hall, the hearth fire crackles, casting long, dancing shadows against the carved timber pillars. The wind howls outside, a relentless gale that rattles the heavy doors and whistles through the thatched roof. But the people gathered around the glowing embers are not afraid of the storm. They are listening to something else entirely. A rhythmic, heavy thud against the frozen earth outside. Footsteps. Too slow, too deliberate, and far too heavy to belong to any ordinary traveler braving the blizzard. Out there, on the icy ridges, stand the ancient earthen mounds, monuments to the leaders of eras past, filled with golden treasures and rusted iron. The old tales spoken in hushed tones say that those who rest within these mounds do not always find peace. Sometimes their greed, their wrath, or their sheer refusal to let go of the mortal realm binds their spirits to their physical vessels. When the veil between the realms grows thin, they rise. They are the restless wanderers in the night, the guardians of the hoards, the haunting phantoms of Scandinavian lore. To face one is to confront the deepest, most primal terrors of the frozen world. Welcome to the chilling reality of the Norse Revenant. To truly understand the profound terror these entities instilled in the hearts of early medieval society, we must look to the very origins of their name. The entity we speak of is most commonly known as the Draugr. The word itself traces its lineage back through the centuries, finding its roots in the Proto-Indo-European stem meaning a phantom, which remarkably evolved from an even older concept meaning to deceive. This ancient linguistic foundation is critical. It suggests that the earliest ancestors of the Nordic people viewed these returning figures as a grand deception, a cruel, unnatural mimicry of the ones they once knew. The original form was gone, replaced by an imitator wrapped in the visage of the fallen. As centuries turned and the harsh realities of northern life shaped the culture, the terminology shifted across the landscapes. In the old tongues, it became a word simply meaning the one who walks again, the Revenant. Curiously, in some modern Swedish dialects, the related word evolved to describe a pale, ineffectual, slow-moving individual who sluggishly drags themselves along. This evolution in language perfectly captures the deep-seated cultural anxiety of the time. In a society where survival depended on vigorous communal labor, an individual who ceased to contribute was a severe burden. The language reflects a parallel between the slow, unyielding gait of the ultimate outcast, the one who refused to remain peacefully in the earth, and those who failed the social contract of the living. When one envisions a phantom, the mind often conjures a transparent, ethereal spirit gliding silently through the mists. The entity of Nordic myth is nothing of the sort. This is a purely physical phenomenon, a substantial, tangible terror. They are not spirits. They possess a corporeal form, retaining physical abilities similar to what they possessed during their waking days. When these entities awaken, Their physical vessels undergo a harrowing, grotesque transformation. They are frequently described as possessing a terrifying hue, their skin darkened to an unnatural bluish black by the icy grip of their eternal slumber. Their presence is announced long before they emerge from the shadows, preceded by an overwhelming, unmistakable aroma of decay that taints the pristine winter breeze. Even more terrifying is their supernatural ability to manipulate their own physical mass. The ancient sagas tell us that they can increase their size and weight entirely at will, swelling to monstrous proportions to physically dominate any warrior brave or foolish enough to cross their path. Their eyes, once familiar and human, now glow with a piercing, eerie luminescence in the dark, serving as twin beacons of relentless malice. Clad in the rusted armor they took to their final resting place, they wield the ancient weapons of a bygone era, rendering them devastating opponents in any confrontation. They are the physical embodiment of the unyielding past, armored in iron and driven by endless wrath. Beyond their towering physical form, these returning figures commanded a staggering array of mystical abilities that elevated them from mere beasts to forces of apocalyptic ruin. Their physical strength was truly legendary, often compared to the raw, untamed power of a magnificent, enraged bull. They could crush heavy timber and shatter wooden shields with minimal effort, making standard warfare tactics utterly useless in their presence. Yet, their dominance extended far beyond brute force. They were practitioners of ancient dark magics, wielding powers similar to those possessed by revered shamans and ritual specialists. One of their most unsettling capabilities was the power to alter their shape. They were not confined to their humanoid vessels. They could seamlessly transform their physical essence into wolves prowling the forest edges, or even take the form of great thrashing sea beasts to navigate the frigid waters. Furthermore, these shadowy wanderers possessed a deep connection to the chaotic elements of nature. They could call forth blinding fogs to disorient travelers, manipulate the weather to bring sudden, freezing squalls, and plunge entire settlements into impenetrable gloom. Their minds, though severed from the world of light, retained a sharp, prophetic edge. They could peer into the mists of tomorrow, predicting future events with the uncanny accuracy of the most powerful seers. Some could even weave terrible hexes, infecting the minds of livestock and people alike, driving them into a state of sheer, inconsolable madness. They were seemingly immune to conventional harm. Typical strikes from standard weapons could not bring their existence to an end, demanding far more elaborate and permanent solutions. To truly comprehend the nature of these entities, one must look to the earthen mounds that dot the Scandinavian landscape. In the medieval terminology, many of these beings were known specifically as the dwellers of the barrow. They were deeply tethered to their ancient tombs, fiercely guarding the treasures, the golden artifacts, and the heirlooms placed beside them at their farewell ceremonies. This lore is not merely the stuff of legend, it is firmly supported by the physical remnants left behind in the soil. Modern historians and explorers have uncovered widespread evidence of a practice known as mound-breaking. Across the northern territories, ancient mounds show definitive signs of deliberate entry, sometimes occurring shortly after the mound was sealed, and sometimes hundreds of years later. While some might assume this was merely an act of seeking forgotten gold, it was often deeply symbolic and ritualistic. People sought to reclaim ancient weapons, believing the power and fortune of the departed leader still resided within the iron. At other times, it was a socially sanctioned act to strip a fallen patriarch of their enduring influence. To prevent the original owners from rising to reclaim their treasures or seek vengeance, communities took extraordinary, labor-intensive precautions. They practiced what is known as the binding of the resting place. In regions stretching from the dense forests of Finland to the plains of Poland, individuals have been found pinned down by massive boulders or secured tightly to the earth with heavy wooden stakes to ensure they could never walk again. In Denmark, ancient runestones have been unearthed, bearing specific inscriptions designed solely to metaphysically anchor the inhabitant, ensuring they remained forever bound to the darkness. The grand Icelandic sagas offer us the most vivid, detailed accounts of these harrowing encounters. Let us turn to the celebrated tale of Grettir the Strong, an exiled warrior whose tragic life was forever altered by his battles with the shadows. During his solitary travels, Grettir confronted a mound-dweller named Karr the Old, a formidable entity who guarded his subterranean riches with unyielding ferocity. The physical struggle between the hero and the entity was fierce, a contest of pure endurance in the pitch-black depths of the earth, as Grettir felt the overwhelming grip of the ancient guardian. Yet, it was another confrontation that cemented Grettir's tragic destiny. He faced a colossal, terrifying revenant known as Glam. The encounter beautifully mirrors the legendary struggles of ancient heroes, echoing the mighty clashes found in tales like Beowulf, where the battle relies on raw, bare-handed might rather than the sharp edge of a sword. The fight was catastrophic, tearing the very roof from the great wooden hall as the two giants clashed under the pale moonlight. Though Grettir ultimately bested the shadowy behemoth, Glam utilized his final breath to cast a devastating curse upon the hero. The curse doomed Grettir to a life of perpetual misfortune, ensuring that the horrifying, luminous eyes of his defeated foe would haunt his every waking moment, eventually leading to his ultimate downfall in absolute isolation. In the sprawling narrative of the Arabic saga, we witness an entire community besieged by the supernatural during the solemn days of winter. This text reveals the profound anxieties of a society transitioning between ancient pagan beliefs and new ways of thinking. Here, the most infamous terror was Thorolf the Lamefoot, a bitter, tyrannical man during his earthly years. His unyielding wrath only multiplied when he passed beyond the veil. He emerged from his resting place to torment the valleys, an unstoppable force causing herds of cattle to perish from sheer fright and driving the local populace into a state of pure despair. His oppressive presence was so overwhelming that the desperate villagers had to relocate his massive, unyielding vessel to a remote promontory, erecting a colossal wall around his mound, built so high that not even a bird could fly over it. But the darkness could not be contained forever. Later, during the long winter nights of the Yule season, the haunting intensified at a nearby farmstead. In one of the most surreal and chilling episodes ever recorded in the sagas, a phantom seal began to slowly rise through the solid wooden floorboards of the hearthroom. A courageous youth named Kjartan stepped forward, wielding a heavy mallet, and methodically struck the creature upon the head, driving it downward like a driven nail until the floor was flat once more. The community, pushed to the absolute brink of collapse, turned not to weapons of war, but to the supreme power of their legal code. The local chieftain, Snorri Godi, convened a formal legal assembly right at the entrance of the haunted dwelling. This unique event was known as the Door Doom. A jury was selected, evidence was presented, and the unseen trespassers were formally charged with depriving the household of its peace and prosperity. One by one, the shadows accepted the legal verdicts. As sentences were passed, the entities offered solemn parting words, stating they had sat there while the sitting was good, before vanishing into the night. This extraordinary event proves that in the minds of the early Northerners, the structure of the law was a force powerful enough to bind the great unknown. Not all who rise do so with mindless malice. Some are bound by the heavy chains of tragic legacy and duty. The legendary saga of Hervor and Heidrek brings us to a desolate island, where the earth conceals the 12 fallen sons of a legendary warrior. They perished together in a final, devastating clash, buried alongside the most coveted and cursed object of their age, the gleaming blade Tyrfingr. Generations later, a fierce shield maiden named Hervor journeys to this lonely, haunted island. She seeks her birthright, the very blade that brought ruin to her lineage. Standing amidst the unnatural, flickering flames that dance over the burial mounds in the dead of night, she calls out to her departed father, Angantyr, The entity that emerges from the soil is not a roaring beast, but a sorrowful, eloquent figure. He pleads with his daughter, warning her that the weapon she desires carries a terrible curse that will inevitably dismantle their entire bloodline. The dialogue between the living maiden and her fallen father is a hauntingly poetic exchange of determination and despair. Bound by the mystical laws of kinship, Angantyr reluctantly surrenders the blade, forever sealing the tragic fate of his descendants. This poignant encounter stands as a profound exploration of ancestral burdens, demonstrating that even those who have left this realm can feel the agonizing weight of their family's destiny. While the earthen mounds held their fair share of terrors, the vast, unforgiving ocean harbored a completely different breed of shadow. The lore makes a sharp, distinct separation between those bound to the land and those claimed by the waves. For a seafaring people, the ocean was the great provider, but it was also a merciless taker. Those who vanished beneath the cold, gray swells, forever denied the dignity of a proper resting place, often returned as something deeply resentful. In the coastal folklore of Norway, these entities are known as the Sea Wanderers. They emerge from the churning tides, their forms draped in heavy, rotting seaweed, seeking to pull the unsuspecting down into the abyssal depths. The Sami traditions share similar tales of entities dwelling in inland lakes and freezing rivers. These figures, known as the Shadows of the Drowned, act as a grim warning to the young, a chilling reminder of the ever-present danger of the water's edge. They could change their form, turning into a massive fish or a seal to deceive their prey. Further out in the lonely Atlantic, on the rugged peaks of the Faroe Islands, the tales speak of a variation that haunts the misty mountainsides. Known for their immense power, pale visages, and long dark hair, these entities adapt to the isolated, vertical landscapes. They are said to harbor cannibalistic desires, serving as the ultimate embodiment of nature's hostility in the furthest reaches of the world. They represent the deep-seated cultural grief for those who embarked on a journey and never returned. When a community found itself at the mercy of such relentless supernatural forces, ordinary defense simply would not suffice. The fallen had to be sent into the final sleep a second, permanent time. The ancient texts detail a highly specific, grueling process required to sever the tether between the spirit and its physical anchor. The first step involved sheer force. The entity had to be overpowered, often through intense physical struggle, until its head could be completely separated from its shoulders. To further confuse the returning spirit, the head was sometimes placed near the lower extremities, preventing the entity from finding its way back to the realm of the living. But this was merely the beginning. To ensure the darkness could not take root again, the heavy remains were placed upon a grand pyre. The sagas note that these tainted vessels possessed an eerie resilience against the flames. It could take an agonizing amount of time for the fire to reduce the form to ashes. Even then, the monumental task remained unfinished. To leave the ashes on the soil was an open invitation for the curse to seep back into the land. Instead, the final remnants were gathered and carried far out into the ocean. There, scattered upon the chaotic, neutralizing expanse of the sea, the entity was finally dissolved, its essence dispersed forever beyond the reach of the mortal shore. The chilling grip of these ancient tales has not faded with the passage of time. Instead, it has reached its cold hands directly into our modern storytelling. If you have ever ventured into the imaginative realms of high fantasy, you have likely encountered their direct descendants. The legendary author J.R.R. Tolkien drew immense inspiration from the Norse concept of the Mound-Dweller. His creation of the sinister wights that haunt the ancient barrows, skeletal figures guarding forgotten treasures who attempt to trap unsuspecting travelers in their underground tombs, is a direct homage to the ancient sagas. The very term was brought to public attention in the late 19th century through the translation of Grettir's saga, connecting the old Icelandic hero to modern fantasy. The digital age has also brought these entities vividly to life in interactive media. Countless adventurers have faced them in the deep, frost-covered ruins of popular video games. In titles like Skyrim, they serve as the eternal, mummified sentinels of ancient dragon cults, preserving the crypts of their former masters with rusted axes and magical shouts. Survival games set in mythological northern realms depict them as seaweed-draped guardians of murky swamps, echoing the old coastal lore of the Sea Wanderer. The silver screen has embraced the atmospheric terror of these legends with incredible reverence. In Robert Eggers' historically meticulous epic, The Northman, the protagonist must descend into the darkness to confront an immense, terrifying mound-dweller, portrayed as a towering, seemingly unstoppable force by an actor standing over 7 feet tall. This entity guards an ancient, mystical blade, perfectly capturing the primal dread found in the earliest texts. Furthermore, the suspenseful film The Damned weaves a harrowing tale of guilt and isolation on the Icelandic coast, where abandoned sailors return from the freezing depths. The film utilizes visceral omens, such as squirming eels found inside the remains washed ashore, blurring the terrifying line between supernatural retaliation and mind-shattering madness. The legacy of the Scandinavian Revenant is a profound testament to the enduring power of myth. They are not simply monsters created to populate scary stories around the hearth. They are the physical manifestation of a society's deepest anxieties. They represent the terror of the unbroken winter, the overwhelming grief for those lost at sea, the devastating consequences of unchecked greed, and the heavy, inescapable burden of family legacy. They remind us that the past is never truly gone. It lingers in the soil, in the rusted artifacts buried beneath our feet, and in the dark, silent corners of the world where the light refuses to reach. So, the next time you find yourself walking through a quiet, frost-covered field, and you see an ancient earthen mound rising softly against the horizon, step lightly, respect the profound silence. For deep within the earth, beneath the roots and the stones, some slumbering forces are better left undisturbed. They wait in the dark, patient and unyielding, a chilling echo of an age that refuses to fade away.